Fascism sees its salvation in giving masses not their rights, but instead a chance to express themselves. That's a quote from Walter Benjamin, who wrote about the aesthetics of fascism. Now, this week is an unusual week in American history. We're seeing a former president who is accused of trying to overturn a presidential election, re-elected and reinstated as the 47th president of the United States. Like many people in the US and around the world, I'm rather horrified by all of the actions that Donald Trump has already taken in his less than a week time in office. And it's very hard to just create lifestyle or fun content because it's hard to do anything, really, when it feels like the world is not the same world that you woke up in just 6 months ago. I will still be creating lifestyle and other forms of content that brings me joy, but occasionally I want to dump some political thoughts on the internet. So welcome to that. My name is Liz. Welcome to my channel. I like to talk about whatever strikes my fancy. And today I want to talk about inauguration fashion and the messages that it is sending to all of us who were observing the inauguration on January 20th. This video today is taken from an essay or some thoughts I wrote on Substack, so I will be reading parts of my Substack post and then having some ADHD tangents. So not every word I say in this video is directly on my Substack, but a lot of the words are. So you can check out my Substack for more thoughts like this. I'm currently writing an essay about McDonald's and the history of evangelical boycotts and the culture wars of evangelical boycotts that dominated the 90s and early 2000s. So that's a fun one that's going to be coming out soon. I'm also writing an essay about hosting parties. I am a person of many interests and I can't niche down to anything. Trump family has nothing left to lose. That's the message that I got from their fashion statements, as designers lost all sense of shame and colluded with the Trumps to make a splash as they re-entered the political stage for Donald Trump's second inauguration. Now, I want to be clear that fashion critique is not a critique of whether a person is pretty or not. Several people on the internet told me when I critiqued Ivanka Trump's fashion that she is gorgeous and I am not. I am not stating whether or not Ivanka Trump is beautiful or whether Melania Trump is beautiful or whether Usha Vance is beautiful. I'm simply talking about the messaging and the styling of their clothes. And clothing and fashion is an art and it is subjective. It's up to the eye of the beholder, and also all art sends a message. So I want to talk about the messaging that their stylistic choices sent to the American people and for the history. This video that I'm making will not be in the history books, but the pictures from the inauguration and their art and the fashion they wore, that will be in the history books. In what time period was America great? That's a question that needs to be answered because Make America Great Again is the slogan of the Trump campaign. It was the slogan in 2016 and it is the slogan of 2024. What I find fascinating is that many conservative fans on the internet seem to like to replicate the 1980s in their messaging and their throwback videos and even in their music choices. But for Trump women, their fashion seems very reminiscent of the 1950s. So perhaps in Trump world, the 1950s is when America was great. But for the 1950s, there were people who were the royalties of American culture. And Ivanka Trump seems to pull many of her fashion designs directly from those emblems. She wore a design that was copied from Grace Kelly to her sister's wedding. Personally, the dress is a beautiful dress. The Grace Kelly copy is a gorgeous dress. Like, that light blue is stunning, but it fits Ivanka awkwardly in my opinion, because Ivanka is not a Barbie and this dress fits her as though she is a Barbie doll. But Ivanka is a New Yorker with a New York business mind, and she has previously worked in the White House. She is a businesswoman, and wearing a Barbie-style American princess dress, it softens her in a way that is unnatural to Ivanka Trump and looks very uncomfortable on her. But Ivanka continued this style of 1950s Barbie looks with bringing Audrey Hepburn's dress, a replica of it, onto the stage at the inauguration ball. I don't know much about Grace Kelly. I know that she married royalty and that she's from Philadelphia. That's literally all I know about Grace Kelly. So when I observe the blue dress on Ivanka, I'm not thinking, how is this honoring or dishonoring Grace Kelly? But when I saw her wearing Audrey Hepburn, my blood was boiling, because Audrey Hepburn is someone I know dearly and love. I love her movies and her life story. Not only was Audrey Hepburn a fantastic actress, but she survived the Nazi takeover of Holland in the 1940s. She had a strained relationship with her parents for the rest of her life because when the Nazis first came to power, her parents were supporters of the rise of fascism, and Audrey Hepburn never forgave her parents. She publicly stated that it was very hard to forgive her mother for their early support of the Nazis. And when the Nazis took over the Netherlands and invaded, Audrey actually joined the resistance. She would smuggle messages in her socks. Her family actually helped hide a British pilot who was shot down during the war, and she would put on secret ballet performances to raise money for the Dutch resistance. And because of the German occupation of the Netherlands, all of the Dutch suffered food shortages, and Audrey suffered childhood malnutrition. And as part of her childhood malnutrition, she had lifelong health consequences, anemia and edema that were caused by a lack of nutrition for when she was a kid. And the lack of food that they had, the Dutch were literally mixing straw in their wheat to create bread. Like, they were putting dirt in the bread because there wasn't enough wheat to make bread. They were crushing up tulips and making flour out of tulip bulbs. Because Holland had a lot of tulips. It's part of the Dutch culture, but they didn't have access to food. So they were literally trying to find ways to eat tulips, which are not nutritious. And many Dutch people starved to death during the war. And that is the kind of life Audrey Hepburn survived. And after the war, she became a lifelong advocate for peace. And she worked with UNICEF and traveled to countries like Ethiopia and Somalia to raise awareness for war crimes against children. Like, Audrey Hepburn is the exact opposite of Ivanka Trump. And in her lifelong opposition to fascism, it is really disturbing to see someone like Ivanka Trump, whose support of her father's administration is a support of fascism, copy Audrey Hepburn's style and try to emulate her when her actions have decried Audrey Hepburn's whole life ethic. I also think Ivanka doesn't look like this dress does not suit Ivanka. The replica looks cheaply made. The fabric does not look like the same fabric. It could be made by it is made by a luxury brand, but it just doesn't look luxury like it does on Audrey Hepburn. And it could be a difference in bone structure and in Ivanka's height compared to Audrey. Like, there's multiple reasons. While I don't think this dress looks good on Ivanka, I also think it is so disrespectful of Audrey that even if Ivanka looks stunning, as people say she does, and I disagree, even if I thought she was beautiful in that gown, I still think it is harmful and disrespectful to Audrey Hepburn's legacy for Trump to wear something that pays homage to her. But it makes sense that Ivanka is trying to rebrand herself as the American princess, as American royalty, because after leaving the 2016 Trump White House, Ivanka suffered like a social outing. She's a New Yorker. She is from New York. But after leaving in 2020, Ivanka and her husband, Jared Kushner, faced social ostracization. And it well-deserved, because the Trump administration was awful from 2016 to 2020. Let's not forget how awful it was. When Ivanka left the White House, she actually did not return to New York because she said that they were such outcasts from New York society that it was uncomfortable. There were literally billboards in Times Square mocking Ivanka and Jared Kushner. And there were posters distributed throughout their neighborhood that showed a picture of them and that said not wanted. They ended up suing some of the people behind those billboards. That's how upset they were by them. Like, they were deeply impacted in a weird way. Like, it really got to their psyche. So they actually relocated to Florida. They no longer live in New York. And for the next 3 or so years, Ivanka and the rest of the Trumps were rather like social outcasts. So the 2024 election was not just vengeance for Donald Trump. For his entire family, it was a return to ascendancy. It felt like vengeance for every single Trump who felt misaligned and devalued from the previous administration. Their path from shameful losers to triumphant winners gives them this chip on their shoulder as they return to the White House, as they proclaim that their agenda is a mandate from the American people, even though they won with one of the smallest majorities in American history. Because they are returning with this chip on the shoulder and this mandate that they have prescribed themselves, they have really nothing to lose. There's no shame. They are not trying to undersell themselves. They want to reclaim their place in American history and be written as the victors of the spoils. And I think we see this culturally as in a response to the Trumps. Kim Kardashian is famously really good friends with Ivanka. And during the first administration, Kim definitely distanced herself from the Trumps. She visited the White House to advocate for the release of a prisoner, which was justified. Like, that's a good reason to visit the White House. But she didn't pose with Ivanka, and she certainly didn't celebrate their friendship. But in the weeks leading up to the 2024 election, Kim Kardashian was posting selfies with Ivanka on her Instagram story, and on the day of the inauguration, she reposted a picture of Melania at the inauguration. So we are seeing cultural acceptance of the Trumps in a way that is very different from 2016. There is no longer cultural shame and collaboration with Donald Trump and his extended circle. And for Ivanka, the lack of cultural shame is to her benefit. She can now wear these gowns that are paying homage to these icons of American history and position herself as the daughter of new American royalty, while also sidestepping questions about her father's politics. She went on the Skinny Confidential Him and Her show earlier this month and told them that she was no longer interested in being politically involved. She said, "I love policy and impact. I hate politics, and unfortunately the two are not separate." About the years she spent as a senior advisor to her father at the White House as a time of, quote, "extraordinary personal growth for me in learning," end quote. I think Ivanka undersells how powerful she was in the first White House administration, because doing so benefits her presenting herself as a princess, not a policy wonk. She used to wear suits and smart looking clothing and was a New Yorker's like fashion icon in the White House. And now she's wearing Grace Kelly dresses and trying to look soft and royal like. And part of that is because she was very complicit in her father's first administration in helping make decisions that actively harmed people. During the protest in 2020, during the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protest in Washington, D.C., one of the most horrendous moments of those protests was when Donald Trump ordered Lafayette Square cleared of protest by the military. So the military came out and they tear gassed protesters. They pushed them back. Reporters who were reporting were also tear gassed. It was a horrific time. People were injured for exercising their First Amendment rights to protest and peacefully assemble. Why were these protesters shoved back and treated so badly by the U.S. military? Because Donald Trump wanted to hold up a Bible in front of St. John's Church and take a picture with it. Who recommended he do that? Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Ivanka actually walked with her father to their church carrying the Bible for him and handed it to him for that photo shoot. It was Ivanka and Jared's idea, and they pitched it as an idea for her father to project strength to the average American family. There was a lot of protests, a lot of civil unrest, and people were very up in arms over police brutality. And their response to that was to exercise more police brutality and to paint a picture of a strong man in Ivanka's father. That was Ivanka's idea. Like, this woman has no shame. She is politically astute in a way and only cares about advancing her father's agenda and enriching her personal wealth. The Washington Post estimates that during their time in the White House, Ivanka and her husband earned between $36 to $157 million in undisclosed partnerships and deals, business dealings that earned them that money. And to be honest, we'll probably never know the true extent to how much the Trump family enriched themselves while they were in elected office. So Ivanka is no American princess. She is an American politician who is just as enriched by profiting off of the American people as her father. She has collaborated with her father. She is trying to paint herself as a mother who's no longer wants to be involved in the dirty work of politics, when she made her wealth and shaped her image in the White House by being directly at her father's side, directly involved in policy decisions that harmed Americans while enriching the Trump family. That's my little rant. That's my little rant on Ivanka Trump. And I saw this quote from Mussolini, who was one of the famous fascists of World War II. He was the fascist leader of Italy. And it just stood out to me as emblematic, as directly speaking to what we witnessed as Donald Trump swore the oath to uphold the Constitution. Mussolini said, "Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power." In 2017, the Trumps and their inner circle struggled to find fashion designers willing to dress them. In fact, Ralph Lauren dressed Melania in the first inauguration and was there were calls for a boycott against the Ralph Lauren brand. But today, the internet is posting memes of Melania Trump's hat and Oscar de la Renta, one of the biggest designers in the world, dressed Ivanka Trump and Usha Vance in the Capitol Dome, seated around the Trump family as Donald Trump swore to uphold the oath of the Constitution. The billionaire Arnault family, who owns one of the largest luxury goods brand in the world, had seats to the inauguration. Also, they're French. They're not even American. How did they get seats to the inauguration when Americans were not even allowed in the building? To me, when I see pictures from the inauguration, when Mussolini said fascism is the merger of state and corporate power, that is what we're seeing. We are seeing billionaires lined up, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, the head of Google, all these people lined up behind the Trump family. They are truly merging state and corporate power into one overlord in this country. We are seeing our constitutional liberties chipped away at, our constitutional rights chipped away at, while the Trumps adorn themselves in the trappings of royalty and celebrate with billionaires. The rest of the American people will suffer for that. And that is the most terrifying part of this whole affair, is there is no shame. We are witnessing billionaires make court with a president in order to enrich their own power and their own selves at the expense of the American people, and telling us that all is well in our democratic republic. There's something rotten in the state of Denmark, as Shakespeare once said, and looking at these pictures from the inauguration, there is nothing more rotten in Washington, D.C. than the merger of state and corporate power. Anyway, thanks for watching. It feels so silly. I feel so dreadful saying all of this, but I can't get this out of my head. I'm very freaked out. I don't know if we'll ever be able to divest state and corporate power after this administration. I truly don't know if we will be able to. It feels like the country has been sold out to billionaires and we will all pay the cost. But I will continue to make things that I've been thinking about, whether that's lifestyle content or video essays like this. And I hope y'all are here for it. And I will see you guys next time. Oh, I will link my Substack here below because I'll be dumping all these thoughts on my Substack for sure. Anyway, thanks for watching. See ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.